What do you make of what you've seen from Trace Spivey down the stretch, and could he be a number one type receiver for this K-State team moving forward in the future?
I mean, he has that potential. I don't know if I'm ready to say that. What I'm ready to say is you could pencil him in as a starter next year. That's what I would say. The way that he's finishing, and he really is just taking advantage of opportunity with Keegan Johnson hurt and Jaden Jackson in the doghouse. So, good. In a way, good thing those things happen to give him that opportunity, because I think he might be looking elsewhere after the season if that didn't happen. So now this probably is going to allow you to say you're prime for a starting spot and you're on the team next year, and convince him to stay. So what I would say is, like, against Arizona State, he had solid numbers. In a way, I thought he played poorly because he made a lot of young player mistakes. But I thought he was really good against Cincinnati. And I thought he took that next step and eliminated some of those mistakes that he was making against Arizona State, and ran better routes, had better awareness, was feeling the field a little bit better. So I didn't think he was that good against Arizona State, but I thought he was really good against Cincinnati. And I do think he is primed to be a starter for Kansas State at receiver next season.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Hello and welcome to a 3 Mall Pod. I'm your host, Cole Manbeck, joined as always by Derek Young of K-State Online, and we're here to recap Kansas State's victory over Cincinnati Saturday in Manhattan as the Wildcats take care of business and win dominant fashion, 41-15. And what was really never a close game, which called for a toast from our friends from Ben Holiday, or from Holiday Distillery. I enjoyed some Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon once again this weekend. I hope many of you had the opportunity to do so as well and enjoy the game, which a comfortable victory. So go get stocked up as always with your Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon, or your 360 vodka if that's your taste. The Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon is my go-to. So go check out your local liquor store. If you're not in the area, you're in the Weston, Missouri area, go up to the distillery, go check them out, take a tour. It's a really awesome time. Otherwise, get to your local liquor store, pick up some Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon for the last couple of games of K-State football, with the regular season finale this Saturday in Ames at Iowa State, and what is a big showdown for the Cyclones, or pick one up for the bowl game. So, or gift it. Gift some for Christmas. Get a bottle or two of Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon if you've got some bourbon friends that you would like to gift something to. Nice little stocking stuffer for the holidays. DY, Cats come out on top this week. Looked night and day different. It was nice to have kind of a relaxing victory, and we're actually just right out of the gate going to make this our top storyline of the week, because DY was, a talking point all week that the K-State offense needed to make significant changes, and what would those changes potentially look like? We got wind on Saturday morning, first thing, that there would likely be a shift and Connor Riley would move down to the field. Now, I think the assumption was Matt Wells, quarterback's coach, would move up to the coach's box. Instead, it was tight ends coach Brian LePack.
He's always been up there.
Oh, LePack's always been up there. And so LePack was up there, and Matt Wells and Connor Riley were on the sideline, and right out of the gate, DY, we notice a change. They run Avery Johnson. They cut him loose. First play of the game is a 33-yard rush from Avery Johnson on his own read, where he pops it to the outside. Next play, I think, went for 19, was called back for an illegal formation. They just ran the ball down Cincinnati's throats in that first half of the game on Saturday. The offense definitely did look different. Avery Johnson, mobility, his assertiveness as a runner, you could see it. What did you make of what you saw from K-State's offense and the differences or contrasts that you saw from before?
Yeah, you kind of covered it all. What I would say is the offensive line looked remarkably better. And some people will say, well, maybe Cincinnati's not any good. And yeah, Cincinnati didn't play a good game at all. And they looked very disinterested at least halfway through. But Cincinnati does have a good defensive line, and you've pointed that out before, and everyone knows Dante Corleone, inside on the interior of their defensive line. So they can move people. So the fact that the offensive line did have some success and was impressive against Cincinnati, I think is a a bullet point to take note of. And besides that, some different, probably, at least in terms of how much they use certain personnel, certain formations, 12 personnel, which is one running back, 2 tight end, a lot less of that. And when they used it, it didn't work. As in, like, just the past few games, that was a trend that continued. But we saw more 11 personnel, 1 tight end on the field, more wide receivers, 3 wide receiver sets. So, and that was the formation that really clicked for Kansas State. And like you said, they really ran the ball and set the tone in that way. Avery was efficient early, maybe not as much in the second half when they struggled in the third quarter, which I think tanked his completion percentage a little bit. It brought it down to 57, but it was at 70 for most of the game until some of those late incompletions. I think in the third quarter only finished with 147 yards, but a good game, especially when you tack on a 72 rushing yards. But again, it's the K-State running game, 281 yards on the ground, 7 yards a carry.
Yeah, we'll break it down even more, but first, gotta always tell you about our friends over at Alenco. For all your home improvement needs, get on over to alencohome.com. Again, that's ALENCO. Home.com, tremendous company owned and operated by Kansas Staters, based out of the Kansas City area, been in the business since 1986. All your home improvement projects, Alenco has you covered. From window replacements, they specialize in premium window replacements, siding on your home. They specialize as well in bathroom remodels, including the Kohler Luckstone shower system. Need new siding, doors, anything on your home, Alenco's got you covered with the best products and top quality service. And as we always tell you, don't need to live in the KC area. They cover much of western Missouri, northeast Kansas, the surrounding KC metro. So if you live in Emporia, Manhattan, Topeka, Wichita, or many small towns like my wife's from Rossville, Council Grove. DY's got it covered. He's heard it so many times. We need to find some smaller towns to throw out there as well from the northeast Kansas area to show some love to those folks. Go to alencohome.com. That's ALENCO home.com. Check out all the services they offer. You can also give Sam, a great K-Stater, a call at 913-961-2165. They'll get you taken care of and answer any questions you have. Go support Alenco, terrific local business, family owned and operated by wonderful K-Staters. DY, you hit on a lot of the things with the running game. And, Chris Kleiman said after the game in the press conference that DJ Giddens and Avery Johnson were also as healthy maybe as they've been in several weeks, which was surprising to me because, candidly, I would have thought that would have occurred after the bye week and not for this one. But I will say that Avery looked very explosive running the football, especially early in the game, and DJ Giddens looked like he had a different level of explosiveness. He was breaking tackles again. Had a little bit more explosiveness to him in this game. Like, what did you make of what you saw from those two? And did you think it was the best that they've looked in a while when it comes to using their legs?
Absolutely it was. It was the healthiest DJ Giddens has looked at in, like you said, a handful of games, probably since at least Houston. I don't know if he was healthy then, or maybe it was the game before when they was it Colorado, who they beat before, West Virginia. So you'd have to go back and look at that. And Avery, obviously, since Colorado, since that's when he took the hit to his hip, and then felt it bite at him the next play when he tried to throw it downfield. But you hit the nail on the head. They were both explosive. They both ran hard. It was definitely the fastest that we've seen Avery Johnson run, the most decisive that we've seen him run. And I know people were complaining, like, why didn't we see this all year or for the past few weeks? And to be honest, I really do think it was a health situation, or, I think health played a large factor in Avery's mobility, or at least willingness to run, because, I said it to you for about a month, and I know you were like, yeah, but I don't know if there's anything to it. But remember, I kept saying, it looks like Avery Johnson runs like he's afraid to get hit, and he probably was. Now that we saw him really take off and run with authority against last week in the win against Cincinnati, because we really hadn't seen that in a long time. And so that makes me think he probably was afraid to get hit because he didn't want to take a helmet or a shoulder pad to the area that was really bothering him. I think it was around the hip or something. So I think that's a large storyline. And if you're Iowa State, you probably wish you would have got Kansas State a few weeks ago after seeing them how fresh and healthy they looked on the offensive side of the ball.
I just thought he looked confident out there, and I think getting him on and using his legs early helped with the confidence component, especially for this K-State offense. And they ran so much inside zone over the last few weeks that you could tell Cincinnati just bit down hard on the first couple of plays of that game, and it was wide open on the perimeter. It was actually interesting because Avery finishes with 72 yards on 10 carries in the game. I think 54 of those yards were on the first drive of the game, highlighted by the 21-yard touchdown run to put K-State up 7-0. And he also had a 19-yard run on that drive that was called back. We'll break down some of the differences that we saw in the All-22 film review with Curry Sexton. That will be on your feed on KCSN early this week as well. Curry and I will record early in the week, and we'll break down some of the differences, contrasts, and plays that we saw called by Connor Riley. Just a couple numbers on or a few numbers on the K-State rushing attack on Saturday. They had 17 carries for 162 yards in the first half, an average of 9.5 yards per carry. In non-garbage time in the game, they had 28 carries for 227 yards. That's 8.1 yards per rush. It was the most rushing yards allowed by a Cincinnati defense in a game this season. The previous high was 231 versus Texas Tech, and it was also the highest yards per carry allowed by the Bearcats this season. The previous high was also against Tech at 6.4. DY already mentioned it. K-State rushed for 281 and 7 yards per carry. K-State 6.8 yards per play, third most against the Bearcats defense this season. And then also, you mentioned it already, DJ Giddens, 15 carries, 143 yards, 9.5 yards per rush. 2 touchdowns, also 3 receptions for 39 yards. And DY, one other thing, I went through every individual rushing play. K-State had 40 rushing attempts in the game, 26 of them gained 4 yards or more. So that was also a difference that, they weren't getting in quite as many 3rd and longs. And when they did, they actually converted a couple of them, 4th and 13 as well, which we'll talk about. But just felt like the rushing success rate, getting positive yards on the ground, the offensive line was just drastically improved. I mean, how much do we say that is, Cincinnati maybe not being or just having a clunker of a game versus Connor Riley being down on the sideline and the impact he may have had? Like, he's always been on the sideline. Like, how much do you attribute to it being that and getting the offensive line stuff cleaned up? Or is it more of a matter of they ran Avery and it made him respect that, and it was a schematic change that's what really opened up the running game?
I wrote down part of the show prep here. I was like, the fact that it didn't look that way in the last month, was it a lack of coaching, a lack of preparation, a lack of execution? Because that's what the coaches like to say. Which I understand lack of execution, especially when it's the simple stuff. But you could say the reason why a play doesn't work, every play is a lack of execution. Somebody doesn't do their job, and that's why it doesn't work. You could say that every time. So I don't give them the out every single time to just call it lack of execution. But obviously, some of that is there, but a lack of execution is also a lack of putting your guys in the best position, because the lack of execution had been pretty consistent, and a consistent lack of execution is a product of something far greater, in my opinion. Avery Johnson, the health, I think that's certainly a factor. The switch for Connor Riley going from the booth to this sideline, or like you said, Cincinnati, a clunker of a game. There's a lot of different factors that could come into play. Is it a little bit of everything, perhaps? With such a small sample size, one game, Cole, I don't know if I could really put my finger on it. And it's certainly possible we could watch them play Iowa State here in 5 days, and it kind of go to crap again, and we consider it a fluke. So I don't know. What we do know is the offensive line looked exceptionally better. DJ Giddens looked healthier, and Avery Johnson looked healthier. So I do think the health of the guys carrying the ball does matter here and does play a role, because that can cover up some holes. I think Connor Riley being on the sideline probably benefited the offensive line. Does it benefit the play calling? Because the play calling was kind of different too. I don't really see that. I think the play calling is you got to go in and reassess what you're doing yourself and kind of making that choice during the week.
Yeah. And look, I still have complaints about the play calling, DY, that I could get into. And I'm not overreacting to this one game. Like, this is a very small sample size. This does not mean everything's been cleaned up and corrected. It does not mean that my push for change is done based off one game. We'll see how they look in Ames against Iowa State. Cyclones have everything to play for, a spot in Arlington in case they can play spoiler We can also get into the long shot chance that K-State has potentially still make it to the Big 12 championship if everything fell into place and K-State won. And Ames, we'll get into that on the show as well, just so everybody knows. Hopefully DY's got that down and memorized because I always get mixed.
Yeah, I need BYU, Baylor to lose. K-State's obviously got to win, and then one of Arizona State or Colorado to also lose.
You know what's stupid to me, DY, is why does Baylor need to lose?
Because they own the tiebreaker on K-State.
That.
Because they actually have played a tougher schedule, and it's because of Oklahoma State not winning a game.
I mean, I was thinking about it at like K-State beat Colorado. They beat, they played in this scenario. K-State would have beaten Iowa State and they would have beaten Colorado, and Baylor lost to both of those teams. And so those are two upper echelon teams. And
I see what you mean, but when it's and Baylor played Oklahoma State too, so it's not just the fact that
really, he played that much. Like, what Baylor's schedule look like? They've been dominating.
The fact is, they played also BYU, Colorado, and Iowa State. They had a very similar record to the schedule to K-State, but they also played Texas Tech, and that probably flipped the scales a bit too. In TCU, Baylor didn't play anybody in the bottom of the league besides Oklahoma State, to be honest. And yeah, I'm looking at it.
So they play. K-State's got a lot of common opponents to what they do.
Yeah, here's the thing: Baylor and K-State's didn't count against Arizona, so they both didn't play Arizona. They both played Oklahoma State. Because I'm looking at the bottom of the Big 12, the teams that didn't win shit this year, and Baylor didn't play many bottom dwellers, especially since Houston won a few games. But again, a lot of common opponents. Their schedule is basically the same, aside from that Baylor played Texas Tech and TCU, and K-State would have played Cincinnati and I don't know the other one that is different.
Yeah, you mentioned TCU.
They played TCU and Tech.
Yeah.
And K-State played Cincinnati and...
Those are the only two that are different from what I'm looking at. They played at Utah. Oh, wait, no, that was a non-con game.
Right.
Just like Arizona was for Virginia.
So basically, they played Texas Tech and TCU instead of Cincinnati, and there's one other team. And neither played UCF or Arizona in league games.
It's the outlier, DY, but Arizona State's at the top. It doesn't make sense. K-State has literally played the top 5 teams of the Big 12 standings, and they have not. Baylor has not. And K-State beat 2 of those top teams in this scenario.
I think it might be Cincinnati's hurting them.
I don't know.
Because Cincinnati hasn't won a game. They've lost 4 straight.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if the Big 12 office knows their own tiebreakers. So I know there's the website that everybody's using that shows that Baylor.
Yeah, but Big 12 sent it out too. They've actually been better about it this year, if I'm going to be honest. Cincinnati's probably going to finish 3-6, I think. So that's another issue. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can dive more into that as well. But it's so BYU plays.
Houston.
BYU got on this weekend again.
Houston.
They got Houston at home. Okay. Oklahoma State plays Colorado on Black Friday. Is that correct? I think it's a noon kick. So we'll need the outcome of that. Oklahoma State, maybe they'll have a little bit of pride and try to avoid a winless Big 12 season and go 0-9.
There's 2 Big 12 Black Friday games. The other one insignificant. Utah, UCF.
Yeah, that one's an ugly one. I don't have any interest in.
So the things that have to happen is Kansas has to beat Baylor, and Houston has to beat BYU. But if you want to break, we could probably break it down more after that.
Okay. Well, we'll do that. I'm sure our friends at Home Field Apparel are enjoying this discussion here as we try to go through the tiebreaker scenarios. I'm rocking some Home Field right now under my vest. I got a Home Field hoodie on, super comfortable. It's got the retro logo on it. This is actually, I think, the Sailor Willie on the hoodie, gray hoodie, but they've got all different colors on their website. They got all different designs of sleek retro looks. Over at homefieldapparel.com, DY is rocking an Oklahoma State shirt.
Go Pokes on Friday. They could get the week started off well. It's probably not going to happen. They haven't won a Big 12 game yet this year, So I'm feeling for Mike Gundy, who says he's not retiring because his old lady won't let him.
Yeah. Well, make sure you dust that off and wear it again on Friday, DY, and pull for the Pokes. And then hopefully you've got some Houston home field apparel gear.
I do. Phi Slamma Jamma, actually.
All right. Rock that on Saturday. And then, you know what? I don't know if you have a KU one. Oh, the guy is stocked up for every scenario.
Yeah.
I feel DY is going to be changing home field shirts 3 to 4 times this weekend for different scenarios.
Wednesday, I might have to wear the KU shirt for our Wednesday show or pregame show.
All right. Well, and then Saturday will come, and you won't be able to rock the home field in the press box in Ames because you don't want the plumbing to leak down on it, and then it'll get ruined from the
Well, that's not a joke. Yeah, we've had computers almost ruined because of the leaking in the press box.
Yes. Well, maybe they've gotten that patched up. So, anyways. So go on over to homefieldapparel.com. They've got over 50 K-State items on their website for you to choose from. You got the discount code 3mile24, but Home Field Apparel is also actually doing their Black Friday sale right now where you can get 30% off Home Field Apparel. And I'm actually, this is poor hosting, but I wanted to make sure I get you the right code here because it's 30% off running. This runs from November 22nd to December 3rd. You can get 30% off any home field gear. So make sure you use this instead of the Black Friday. Nick, do you by chance have the discount code for Black Friday? I'm having trouble getting it to pull.
He does not. So we're not prepared here today. I don't either.
No, I will find it for you folks, and stay tuned as we talk throughout the show, and I will get it in there multiple times for you to hear. Get some home field apparel gear with the holidays coming up. Would be a great gift along with some Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon. So I'll find that code for you guys and give it a shout out multiple times during the show. Actually, we've got it now. Nick's got it. 30% off with discount code on your entire order, BFCM24. Again, that is BFCM24. That runs through December 3rd. So you got a little bit more than a week to go get stocked up for the holidays and have some gifts to give with home field apparel gear. So go get stocked up there and enter discount code BFCM24. 30% off is a pretty big deal, folks.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your number one source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Before we'll dive a little bit back. We'll circle back into more of the tiebreakers and everything here in a little bit, but I do want to talk just a little bit more in depth about the Cincinnati game. In addition to the offense, I thought the defense really flew around the football field, especially early on. It just looked like they were flying all over the place. Guys were racing to the ball. They bottled up, Cincy's offense, especially the first 4 drives of the game. Cincy's first 4 drives are 3-and-out punt, 6 plays, 8 yards, and a punt. Turnover on downs. K-State was up 20-0 at that point in the game. I thought the defense also set the tone in this one. Cincinnati, 146 yards of offense in the first half on 36 plays, just 4.1 yards per play. The 52.5% completion percentage by Cincy or 50% actually when you count the backup too. Was a season worst for the Bearcats. The 5.4 yards per play was the second worst of the season for Cincinnati as well. They score 15 points on 11 drives in the game, an average of 1.36 points per drive. But when you take away garbage time, it's actually 9 points on 9 drives, so 1 point per drive. The 5 yards per pass by Cincinnati, second lowest allowed by K-State defense on the season, behind only the 4.5 yards per pass allowed at West Virginia. Brendan Sorsby, talented quarterback for Cincinnati, had thrown for over 2,400 yards, 16 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. It's been really solid this year for him, the transfer from Indiana. It's his lowest quarterback rating of the entire season by far. He had a 22.6 QBR against K-State. His previous low for QBR was 41.1 versus West Virginia. So defense really bottled up, and that Cincinnati offense, which has some talented pieces to it. I thought they did a really nice job. What did you make of the effort you saw on the defensive side?
A really good start, and like you said, that set the tone because they were able to jump on Cincinnati because the offense also, got out and scored a bit early, and then I just kind of look at the numbers though, and I'm not saying it was fool's gold or that they were fortunate, though you could make that argument. But like I think the reason why the defense had the success they did is two things. And it's to their credit, by the way. So don't get me wrong, they played well enough. I just don't know if I would say they were remarkable. Is one, they started out so well and got help from the offense that they basically game scripted Cincinnati completely out of it, and Cincinnati had to get away from what was working. Because you look at those rushing numbers, Cincinnati ran the ball. 6 yards a carry. 140 yards by Corey Kiner. They had 6 yards a carry. And that's not including that is including Lichtenberg, who is negative 5.5 yards a carry, right? So I don't want to jump completely on the defense bandwagon for this performance, but the stuff that they kind of helped them is to their credit, because they did start out so well that they were able to game script out of them, and Cincinnati probably didn't run it as much as they would have liked, because if you're running that well, you probably wish you would have ran more than 29 times and definitely passed less than 40, but at the end of the day, when you're getting crushed the entire game, you don't get that fortune to do so, right? K-State's been in that situation before as well. And another reason why it turned out a lot better than it could have is late downs. And credit to the Kansas State defense. It's probably their best performance in late downs this year. Cincinnati, 3 of 17 on 3rd and 4th down.
Yeah, 0-5 on 4th downs, so 5 turnover on downs.
Yeah, see, think about it. If they get 2 or 3 of those 4th downs, it's a different game. So I'm just pumping the brakes a little bit on the defense.
I'd have to go back and check the numbers, but I felt like they bottled up the Cincy rushing attack, though, like in the meaningful part of the game.
There was some stuff that was going, I thought. But again, Cincinnati couldn't consistently stick to the running game because they were down 20-3 in like a blink of an eye.
Yeah, Corey Kiner, LSU transfer running back from 3 years ago. He's got over 1,000 yards.
That reminds me of Cam Scatterby a little bit.
He's a good player. Second straight season, he's now gone over 1,000 yards for Cincinnati. But Sorsby struggled. They had him rattled all game. He was off.
He had to throw an obvious passing downs. So, like, there was no element of surprise to anything that they were able to do on Saturday night. So, again, it's Kansas State's defense. Like, there's a reason why that turned out that way. But, like, yeah, Kansas State always knew what was coming, because they always put Cincinnati in obvious situations because of the early lead. That's what, when you get an early lead, that's big time. It just changes an entire game. And game scripts some teams out, like it did Cincinnati on Saturday. I know and to be honest, when you get up like that, it's just like Arizona State did against K-State. You are incentivized to sit on that lead and to ride it out. So your play calling does change. So I wonder if your gripes with the play calling to it is to that end at some point when they're like, man, we're up 27-3 at halftime, let's coast, because it is smarter to play it that way at that point.
Yeah, I've just seen too many questions with the offense to totally give that much leeway when it comes to that. I mean, I'll get into that in a minute. There were some plays that really bothered me once again, but I mean, I'm going to find plays every game. The common fan is that bother him. We'll get into that in just a moment. I mean, one thing about the defense, DY, Sorsby the week prior against Iowa State ran for 141 yards on 14 carries against Iowa State, which takes note. Avery Johnson looks fresher. K-State plays in Ames this weekend, and Brendan Sorsby.
And he had a real long run. Was it called back, or did that stay on the board?
Well, he only had 19 yards.
Yeah, but that's sacks. I think he got sacked 4 times. So take away the sacks, and they probably better, right?
Let me pull up what his long run was in the game.
It might have just got called back, because didn't he have a 40-yard run at one point? I thought, and it's not there. It says as long as 15, so it must have got called back. You remember? He was going towards the north end zone.
There was at least one play where, like, I just kind of stopped watching because I knew they had already called a hold.
I think that was probably it, and maybe that's what got him loose. But I'm just saying, like, Sorsby could have had a lot more yards. Him being sacked 4 times, probably, how many yards does he have if you take away those sacks? Well, it says 14, I guess. So 33, with 14 more yards. So the 4 sacks made a difference. I just worry a little bit that we're going to give the defense. I love what they did on 3rd and 4th down, but I worry a little bit that we give them too much credit.
Yeah. Well, I kind of worry that we're giving the offense a little too much credit right now, DY. I still worry that this is too small of a sample size.
I think it's too small of a sample size, maybe from a play calling standpoint, which is going to be your gripe. I get that, and I would say I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon there. I would say that I think the offensive line is going to benefit from Conor Riley being on the sideline. I don't think that's a fluke.
Yeah.
And Iowa State's defense hasn't been that good this year. Relative to their standard, yeah.
They've suffered several injuries, right? They've lost some key pieces that I assume probably will be out for Saturday. And look, if I'm nitpicking play calls, the thing that bothers me is these designed. They did it at least twice on Saturday too.
12 personnel QB sweep.
Yeah, God, did I bitch about it in the group text or something?
No, but I because in my head, and I know that they have to change it up a little bit. But in my head, every time they went to 12 personnel, I knew they were probably going to lose yards or get a 2-yard gain. 12 personnel just wasn't working. But if you stay at 11 the entire game, you're probably being too predictable. So I get it. But yeah.
I love, though, so I didn't actually complain to you guys about that, and you knew exactly where I was going. It's the QB sweeps. I hate straight QB sweeps with nothing else to it. There's no read.
My problem is, and again, if you want to play devil's advocate for those listening to what Cole and I are saying, you have to say at some point you have to run something like that or else you're just going to be too predictable. I get it. You can't stay in 11 formation for an entire game. So, and I'm glad that they didn't run a ton of 12 personnel, which is 2 tight ends. But I knew almost every time they went to, I knew it was going to work. Here's a problem too. It's you put 2 tight ends on the field, blocking for Avery Johnson on a sweep. And I get it that maybe you have to call it once or something, or you're going to run something off of it at some point. But the players on the field that aren't blocking right now are the tight ends. So you're asking the position that's probably blocking the worst in that game to block for Avery Johnson.
Here's the only thing I could say. Then you could set up out of this QB sweep, EY. And the coincidence of this is I was texting you, Curry, John.
Because if you do it out of the diamond formation, because isn't that what it was? No, never mind. It was unbalanced. Because I remember a few times they've done it out of a diamond formation when they have 2 tight ends in the backfield, which I don't like that either, because they're you're not going to hand it off to a tight end. The defense probably knows what you're going to do. But if you're going to do that, put Joe Jackson back there or Dylan Edwards when he's healthy, or even DJ Gibbs, it doesn't matter which running back, and then have them go take a wheel route to the opposite side of the field of where that sweep would technically go.
Well, I was thinking you could do that, or I had texted you guys on Saturday morning, we were watching Ohio State and Indiana. They ran Will Howard out to the right. They leaked the running back out, backside screen, wide open.
I will say Avery Johnson has been really bad at throwing screens this year. He just his precision and his touch is not there yet to make that kind of throw. I remember 3 of his interceptions are on screen passes.
Yeah, those are over the middle, right? I mean, this.
I just don't know if I think if we saw that, then do that, then I think we'd be pissed that we're running a screen in that situation with Avery Johnson, who has shown that he's not good at throwing it so far.
Well, I wouldn't wanted to show it when they're up 27-3 on Cincy. However, I want to show it against Iowa State. You set it up.
I worry. He could throw a back-breaking interception, especially in a game that's going to tight. Especially, I'm not going to. I don't think it's a guaranteed until, especially with a defense that's usually pretty disciplined, like Iowa State. They haven't played well, but they're usually in the right spot. Look, in the game, I think you threw an interception on a screen. Against BYU, against Colorado. Yeah, the losses, if you think about it, are bad interceptions on screen passes.
Well, I think the one to Colorado was just a pass.
Well, that's a win, actually.
Middle, right? I mean, it was just in traffic.
They set up a screen. Yeah, it was a screen. Because it was at the end of a half. Yeah.
Oh, at the end of the half against Colorado. BYU was at the end of the half. He really had the one pick against Colorado, and that was at the end of the game, 4 minutes left, that they was on an angle route or something.
So I'm thinking something else. There's 2 that I can picture in my head. I got the wrong opponent, though.
All right, well, if it's not open, Avery can just run it,
Yeah, I know, but you got to run plays that you think your quarterback can execute well. That's one of them that I wouldn't say.
Well,
Because then you'll just say lack of execution.
I hope they're running. I think it'll be there. There's just so much different action you could run off of things.
I just don't think they should be running that at all.
I just think they need to be more creative still. So I'd like to see.
One of the reasons why I say no is because I don't want them to go to 12 personnel anyway. Like,
well, they don't have to do it out of 12, right? They could do it out of 11.
I'd rather that, but out of 11, it's probably not going to be as open. But
all right, just a couple more things, DY, on the offense. Also, K-State's starting field position. First half was really good. We talked about how they have the worst starting field position in any Power 4 school, I think, in the country this year on the offensive end. K-State started its first 6 drives on their own 35, 34, own 45, own 33, own 25, and then the Cincinnati 6 after the Mott interception. Those were in the first half. So their average starting field position on their first 6 drives was their own 44-yard line, which certainly helps with the offense. And then DJ Giddens, just a few numbers on him because he's really tracking toward, again, being one of the best running backs in school history. DJ had runs of 32 yards, 20, 19, 17, and 14 in this game. Joe Jackson also had a 16 and 11-yard run. Avery had a 21-yard and 33-yard run, so a lot of explosive runs in this game. DJ now over 100 yards in 7 of 11 games this season, tied for the 5th most 100-yard games in a season in school history. His 13 career 100-yard games are the 3rd most in school history behind Darren Sproles and Deuce Mon. He passed John Hubert to move into 3rd all-time on the career rushing yards chart at K-State with 3,015 yards. He entered the season 16th on the all-time career rushing yards chart, so he has jumped 13 spots this season. His 1,271 yards on the ground rank 8th highest in a single season in K-State history. He needs 85 yards to move into the 6th best season. He needs 194 yards to pass Darren Sproles' 2002 season for the 4th most yards in a single season. Perhaps most impressively, his 6.65 yards per carry that he's averaging right now this season would be the best in a single season in K-State football history. Darren Sproles owns the mark at 6.49 yards per rush set in 2003. Sproles owns the career yards per carry mark at 6.11. Giddens is 2nd in school history at 6.0. Alex Barnes is 3rd at 5.71. So at worst, DJ is going to hold on to that 2nd spot for the highest yards per carry number in school history if he's not back. If he is back, that's great news for K-State. And I know that was a question asked to DJ after the game on Saturday, DY. Like, what would you say? What do you anticipate DJ Giddens doing? Going pro? You expect him to potentially come back? Like, what would you say the odds are?
I don't know what the odds are, so I'm probably going to sidestep the question a little bit. But I would say that for the longest time in the last 12 months, I've just been under the assumption that he would go pro. I would just say I've heard from multiple different sources in the past few days that suggest that's not a lock, that a return is certainly on the table. And it's not, and they made it sound like, there's a little bit of a chance it comes back. They made it sound like it's going to be a decision, something that needs to be discussed. So I think there's more of a chance than what many of us assumed.
I mean, you would have somewhat of a shot to challenge Darren Sproles' career rushing yardage mark at 4,900 plus if he came back, depending on how he finishes these last 2 games.
Yeah, you'd have to have the best season of his career, probably.
Yes, he would. I mean, he would need to have at least 200, 300 yards down the stretch between Iowa State and the bowl game, and then have like a 1,600 yard type season.
What he needed was an extra game, the Big 12 title game.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, BY, that K-State as a team, despite some of the rushing struggles we've talked about over the last few weeks and our frustration level with that, K-State now is averaging 6 yards per carry on the season. The school record for a single season is 5.27 in 2016. I mean, they're averaging 0.73 yards more than any team in K-State history on the ground. And yet we've been griping about the running game. Think what it would have been if they wouldn't have went through this kind of struggle. And also part of it is they've had several explosive runs that cover up some of the flaw running game issues.
It did against Arizona State. You got the late ones in the second half.
KU, they had these explosives that made it look look a little bit better. The 281 yards on the ground, most versus an FBS opponent this season, or second most by K-State against an FBS opponent this season. I'm sorry, and it was their second highest yards per rush against an FBS opponent this season, behind only the 8.8 yard per carry versus Oklahoma State. DY, one more question on the offense. I just keep extending this talking point conversation. Trace Vivey, another big game, 5 catches, 63 yards on the heels of 4 receptions for 56 the previous week against Arizona State. He continues to really come on, the 6'4" redshirt freshman from Arizona. Starting to really show some things. Like, what do you make of what you've seen from Trace Vivey down the stretch, and could he be a number 1 type receiver for this K-State team moving forward in the future?
I mean, he has that potential. I don't know if I'm ready to say that. What I'm ready to say is you could pencil him in as a starter next year. That's what I would say. The way that he's finishing, and he really is just taking advantage of opportunity with Keegan Johnson hurt and Jaden Jackson in the doghouse. So, good. In a way, good thing those things happen to give him that opportunity, because I think he might be looking elsewhere after the season if that didn't happen. So now this probably is going to allow you to say you're prime for a starting spot and you're on the team next year, and convince him to stay. So what I would say is, like, against Arizona State, he had solid numbers. In a way, I thought he played poorly because he made a lot of young player mistakes. But I thought he was really good against Cincinnati. And I thought he took that next step and eliminated some of those mistakes that he was making against Arizona State, and ran better routes, had better awareness, was feeling the field a little bit better. So I didn't think he was that good against Arizona State, but I thought he was really good against Cincinnati. And I do think he is primed to be a starter for Kansas State at receiver next season. So it'll be interesting how that all shakes out, because obviously, who's leaving, then you're going to wonder, right? And you're going to have 3 guys with expired eligibility anyway, though, with Jaden Jackson, Dante Cephas, and Ty Bowman. So those 3 are out. You got 2 high school receivers already committed and a JUCO receiver committed. So, and they're obviously not even acting like they're done at the position either. And they'll probably hit the transfer portal there as well. So I would say they're expecting some attrition there as well. And I don't. The only thing I'll say here is, like, one player that looks like has zero focus and played another poor game, and he's got a run of poor games now, is Jace Brown.
Yeah. I'm not going to argue that. Hopefully we see him get back on track as well. I mean, the thing about Trace Vivey, DY, you mentioned a few of the mistakes, like coming off the first down and running back to Avery against, like, Arizona State early in that game. Like, those are mistakes that could have been coached through and fixed earlier in the season if they would have just played their young talent early on. Like, why? The problem I have is they talked a big game about using their young talent more and playing these guys more. And then, I mean, those are mistakes that could have been fixed earlier in the year, and he could have been playing a lot more as the season went along. They could have used him. He's a difference maker. He's a guy they don't have. 6'4", physical, bodied wide receiver. I mean, that he should have played more earlier in the year. And instead, he sat too much on the sidelines. There were games where he had 5 snaps or less. So, but to your point, like, the growing signs that we saw with him in this game, like the the touchdown grab, you see him. I mean, I'm sure you saw it. How he went with his quarterback. He went with Avery. He fought off the defender and then rolled with Avery, got wide open. The 3rd and 11, he just trucks the defender, shows the physicality. The 4th and 13, the awareness to get upfield, to make a move, to get to the sticks. Fortunately, I don't know if that was a fumble or not. Like,
it was a fumble.
I knew they ruled it a fumble. I just didn't know if he was actually down and they just didn't. Nah, okay, so it was out before he was down. So,
but to it, in his defense, or like what he had to do to get that first down made the ball vulnerable.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that ball went out of bounds. So big break there. DY, as we look ahead to Saturday at Ames, obviously we'll have our weekly pregame show. John will be back for that. It'll be the 3 of us. But, what do you kind of make of K-State's chances at Iowa State?
I thought they had no chance if you asked me a week ago. Now I'm like, if the offensive line kind of continues and does their thing, you're playing spoiler, so I think you're going to be engaged. I don't think you have to worry, especially with Iowa State being a semi-rivalry anyway, and having the opportunity to really ruin their season. Now, you'll probably, there's a chance that you'll know that your own Big 12 title chances are already expired at that point. But Iowa State's, I think, would still be alive, especially since BYU doesn't play until afterwards. So you know that Iowa State's got a lot to play for. But I guess what I'm saying, I don't worry about the motivation aspect in this one. Like I did against Cincinnati, and to their credit, they still showed up and played hard. So I'm not worried about the give a damn factor, so to speak.
Doesn't Iowa State control its own destiny regardless of what anyone else?
Or one of them does. I didn't know which one. Yeah,
I thought John. I was asking John in the group text the other night just to try to get a sense of like where Iowa State's mindset will be, and I think he said they control their destiny regardless of what anyone else does, and they're fighting for their first 10-win season ever in program history. It's senior day. They hate K-State. K-State doesn't like them. It'll be a ratcheted up.
Iowa State. They don't. It says Iowa State clinches a Big 12 title game berth with a win plus an Arizona State loss and a BYU loss, or a win and an Arizona State loss and a Colorado loss, or a win and a BYU loss and a Colorado loss.
They really need that much to happen?
Yeah, they need 2 of the other 3 to lose.
I've seen Iowa State people on my timeline like acting like a win and they're in. I guess I just assumed that was the scenario. Okay.
According to this, I think I deleted it, but the Big 12 did send out tiebreakers update. You can keep going.
At the games is 6:30 on Big Fox on Saturday night. I would suspect both K-State and Iowa State will probably be ranked in the college football playoff poll. We know Iowa State will. K-State will probably, in my mind, sneak in right around 25th or 24th. Iowa State, like I was listening to Brendan Mott in the post-game interview on Saturday night on K-State radio, and he did mention like they have not forgotten what happened last year, the snow in Manhattan in that game. We know Chris Kleiman, would love to beat Iowa State. I don't think there's fond feelings there either. So look, there's still plenty to play for. K-State can get to 9 wins in the regular season. They can get to 10th win in a bowl game, finish strong, and also beat another top 25 team on the schedule. So were you able to find that, DY? While I
looked, and it looks like it's right. So
break all their way.
Yeah. Man, it's weird. But if all 4 win, I guess, or all 4 lose, I don't know. This is confusing. But if all 4 win, it's Arizona State versus Iowa State.
Yeah. Our producer Nick thinks Arizona State's the only one that controls its own destiny altogether if they win. Which, if you were to tab which team, so out of the ones that K-State, so looking at K-State's chances, DY, which again are a very long shot. I saw Max Olson. I think is Max at ESPN now? I can't remember. He was with The Athletic. I can't remember where Max Olson's at now, but I saw his tweet come across my feed with the link to likelihood of getting to the Big 12 championship game. What's a statistical predicted formula? And it had K-State at 15%, Baylor at 12% chance. So there is a chance, but not all that in its favor. But if you were to look at one of the games that K-State needs to happen to fall their way, who do you think is most likely to lose this weekend?
Yeah, I'm actually, I think I just confused myself in those scenarios. So maybe anything I just said, I don't know if I would take it to the bank. But because basically I was looking at it, and it didn't have anyone with just winning they're in. So that was weird. So I don't know if I was looking at the right thing. But the one most likely to lose out of the 4?
Yeah, out of the ones that need to happen, outside of K-State winning, who do you think is most likely to get upset that K-State would need?
Well, because I don't know if it's an upset. I think Baylor, because KU's kicking everyone's ass.
Well, that's a 1.5 point spread too, right? I think Baylor's only favored by 1.5.
I'm surprised they're favored.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Baylor's been kicking everybody's ass too. I mean, the two hottest teams of the Big
I
12.
would agree. Yeah.
That's Arizona State. Arizona State at Arizona to me, DY, only because it's a rivalry game. So
I mean, that would probably be number 2 on my list.
BYU can be. I mean, BYU the way they look, man. Houston could just go in, muddy the game up.
They could, but BYU's at home, so I'll put that third. But I think the Arizona State would be 2, and I think Baylor would be the most likely. Then Arizona State, then BYU, then Colorado, just because they're playing the worst team in the Big 12.
Yeah.
But Oklahoma State just put Texas Tech down to the wire, so who knows? Oklahoma State also should have beat BYU.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, as a BYU fan, it's got to feel brutal to just watch it collapse at the end when you were right there with everything. But they've been playing with fire all year, and we've been saying it. Like, we don't think BYU's nearly as good as they've shown. They've won a lot of just miraculous games. When you look at Utah, you look at Oklahoma State as well. Credit to them. They pulled those wins out, but it was coming. And that's why I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if Houston went in there and that's a one-score game down the stretch as bad as Houston is. So we'll see what transpires. Look, the one thing I will say about Thanksgiving weekend college football games, DY, is growing up, there's a lot of rivalry games. And there were times when K-State needed Colorado to beat Nebraska on Black Friday, and nobody would give Colorado a shot. There was one year, I think Colorado was like 3-8. And Nebraska was top 5 in the country, and they choked the game. Colorado had the game won. Like I think they missed like a 30-yard field goal. John would be able to help me with some of these. There's been multiple times where like some of these games are a lot closer and competitive than they would look on paper when you look at it. So weird things happen this weekend when the pressure and weight is on everybody's shoulders. We'll see, but it's certainly a long shot. K-State's gotta go take care of business itself, which is what's most important.
Yeah, I mean, is that probably I'm trying to think here. Obviously, we talked about Arizona State. What did we say? Is the most likely? Who did I pick?
You picked. You picked KU over Baylor. And then you Arizona State.
What's interesting is like, yeah, which I'm sticking with that. But it's funny, you have all those 4 teams playing different teams. The 14th tied for first right now. But like the best game of the weekend, like, is probably Kansas State at Iowa State.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, there's a reason it's on main Fox at 6:30. So,
but in that game, there's a potential for that game not to matter, right? Because what if Arizona State and Colorado both win?
Well, I still don't know what it be. Still don't understand if Iowa State controls its own destiny. No.
Because technically, shouldn't 2 teams control their own destiny?
I mean, you would think. Yeah, I mean, so that John's probably listening to. John will listen back to this and be like, "These idiots." Iowa State.
Well, I was on John's Twitter trying to figure it out, but
yeah. Well, we'll text offline with John, and we'll have the answer by the pregame show. Okay, the pregame show, we will have the tiebreakers figured out for all of you guys and we'll have John to help break it down for us. So
I guess the reason why maybe only one does, because the tiebreaker scenario could be different. It depends on how many teams are tied.
Yeah, it could. Yeah. So, all right. Well, DY, anything to add before we wrap this up?
No, I just confused myself. So, you want to touch on a little basketball just to finish?
No, not really. I do not. So let's not do that.
They lost to Liberty. In case you didn't watch, they played in the semifinal, or they played in the losers bracket.
Yeah.
Today, if you're listening on Monday at 4:30 against Longwood, who's made the NCAA tournament last year.
You know what? I'm a PR guy. Let me spin it back to the positive. 2 commitments this weekend, DY, from a wide receiver and a junior college defensive tackle. Why don't you highlight those as we wrap this up?
Well, one has an interesting angle, right? If you want to go there with Arion Concepcion, I forget where he's even from, but former
Really,
Yeah.
just like a brother, yeah.
Yeah, was committed to NC State, decommits, gets offered by K-State, visits right away, commits to K-State right away. Everyone knows who his brother is probably at this point. If you don't, it was probably might have been the best true freshman receiver in the country last year. If not, he's in the top 3 or top 5. He had I want to say over 70 catches and almost 800 or over 800 yards last year. I think he had 7 catches and 72 yards against K-State in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Now he's not been as productive this year. Maybe they're dealing with some quarterback issues. They had a really bad start too. So you're always contingent on the quarterback a little bit. So not as productive this year, but that's Kevin Concepcion. I have no idea if there's something going on with that. All I would say is my alarm bells go off when the brother decommits from the school that his brother plays for.
That's a very interesting thing. And from the home state school. I mean, they're both from Charlotte, right? And K-State. And what I would say about this DY is it all seemed to move very quickly. K-State offered, the visit was set up. We found out about the visit mid last week, right? And then he committed already on the visit. So it moved quickly. And not to make this about his brother at NC State, but Kevin Concepcion, to your point, last year had 71 receptions as a freshman receiver for 839 yards and 10 touchdowns. And not only that, DY, 41 carries for 320 yards. They used him as a Swiss Army knife, jack of all trades type player. This year, he's only got 36 yards rushing on 15 carries, and he's got 50 receptions for only 416 yards, 8.3 yards per catch. But to your point, they've had quarterback issues at North Carolina State this year. If I pull up the stats, their numbers, I think, are probably pretty atrocious via the pass. They got, 11 interceptions. They've thrown for 2,500 yards, so actually not awful. But Grayson McCall was the guy brought in to be the quarterback from Coastal Carolina, and he got hurt, and his career is over, I think, unfortunately, due to concussion issues. So, yeah. No, I mean, Kevin Concepcion, if he wanted to enter the portal, and play with his brother.
He has the most receptions on the team, but not the most receiving yards. That's Justin Jolie, who's a tight end. He has the most touchdowns catches on the team, 2 at 5. Most catches with 50. Now, I will say the reason why maybe his production is different. They have 10 guys with 10 catches or more.
It's funny, DY knew the numbers exactly in the bowl game that he had. 7 for 72 was right against Keith State and 3 carries for 23 yards. It's almost like DY was looking for a reason there to look into the numbers. So,
yeah, but 10 guys with 10 catches or more. That's wild. They had 10 guys with 11 catches or more last year. Jeez, they just showed off.
Kevin, if you want to enter the transfer portal, if you want to come play with your brother and wrap up your career here, by all means, we welcome you with open arms. So,
is that a wild 10 for 10 with 10? I guess not really. K-State is 9 with 10 or more. Yeah.
I should real quick note as well, DY. I forgot to mention injury updates. Keegan Johnson did get a few snaps on Saturday, which was a surprise. Dylan Edwards, Chris Kleiman acted like would be the more likely play, and that he.
Yeah, I was really, and I never really laid down an opinion on it on the record anywhere. But in my head the whole week, I was like, that's really weird because of the way the Dylan Edwards injury was explained to us. I was like, that seems pretty quick return.
Yeah, I thought so too. Yeah. We'll see if he plays this.
But the way that injury was explained to us, you would think he'd have a shot at Iowa State, but still wouldn't be a certainty, I wouldn't think.
Well, and the cold weather can't help things, right? I mean, it's playing in the cold, taking the hits in the cold, and turning.
And that game, we haven't really had a cold game yet this year, and all of a sudden we're going to get a super cold game. We're talking about 10 degrees.
Yeah, we've had unseasonably warm weather for the.
And now you're going from basically having every game played in the 60s or above this year to right to 10 this weekend in Ames.
Yep.
I may stay in the hotel in Des Moines and not even go. All right,
TY, remember the 2018 game when we were all in the press? That was the one when the press box water was leaking on the. That game was 0 degrees, and there was that blizzard that came in. That was when you were in the hotel room right next to Gene Taylor.
Yeah.
you guys decided to stay and you got stuck in terrible snow. We hightailed it out of Ames after the game, after we wrapped everything. We beat that big snowstorm by like 2 hours. So
Yeah, we had drove through it, scared for my life.
I remember getting the text updates of the pictures. I'm like, I can't see the road. Like, I don't know how people.
We had no business driving too, but whatever. Made it alive. I think it would probably took us 3 hours longer than usual to make that drive. Then the following year was the cold ass game in Manhattan, right?
Yes. Josh Youngblood
With the wind.
Yeah, there's only like 25,000 fans there because the weather was so cold and the wind.
The wind was the worst. Oh my God. I think the wind chill was like 20 degrees colder than the actual temperature.
Yeah. Chris Kleiman beat Iowa State 27-17, and then Jamie Pollard politicked his way into the Camping World Bowl.
Yeah, friendships were broken on that one too.
Yes. Only a few people will know what we mean there.
Every time it's like a weather game, because even the 10-9 game was really cold, I think.
I wasn't there that one. That was
But because I remember when Kleiman, because the only reason why I remember it being cold is the picture in my head is Kleiman and Gene Taylor being bundled up and hugging each other after like a stop or whatever.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap this. We'll talk more Iowa State memories and preview the Cyclone game this Saturday in Manhattan. But we'll call this one a show. Hopefully, y'all enjoyed it. We'll have the pregame show coming out on Thursday. Well, Thursday, I assume, Nick, as always, with that being Thanksgiving. Maybe you guys can tune out your family, and when you're driving to your Thanksgiving family gathering, you can listen to a little 3-mall. Maybe we'll release it Wednesday afternoon, Nick says. We'll see. We also will have the All-22 with Curry Sexton that will come out early this week as well, so check it out on the KCSN feed. And then we'll have the player interview to be announced on who that will be. But we'll have 4 shows this week, including this one, and then hopefully the post-game show against Iowa State. I'll be able to do that one with John and DY can.
You should just bring Will Swanson back. Just be superstitious. Just keep talking to him until they lose.
DY, the last 2 guests I've had for the player spotlight, Brandon Mott gets an interception now. And
Swanson touchdown.
Swanson gets the touchdown on senior day.
They just want to talk to you.
Yeah. So Trey Spivey is who we're gunning for. I'll just tell everybody for this week's episode. So be on the lookout for that. We've had Junior Spivey, his dad, who's a World Series champ and a great, great guy, on our Patreon pods before over on patreon.com/3malls. So some bonus content over there. We've had him on before. Fun to talk to. And Trey, really well-spoken, really mature for his age. I'm looking forward to hopefully having that conversation. So if you're not subscribed to the KCSN feed and listen to 3Mall, but you enjoy the show, please do so. Remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment or review if you can. We continue to try and grow the channel, and we'll continue to try and bring you as much content as possible. Go support our sponsors, as always. Holiday Distillery. Go get some Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon. Alenco. Go to alencohome.com, ALENCO home.com for any of your home improvement needs. A tremendous company owned and operated by K-Staters. And go check out homefieldapparel.com as always and enter the discount code BFCM24 through December 3rd, and you'll get 30% off as part of their Black Friday sale. So go check them out. Over 50 K-State items on their website. For Derek Young and for Nick Springer behind the scenes producing the show, I'm Cole Manbeck signing off on another episode of 3Mall.